Okay, thanks for joining me, everybody, again. Sorry, I guess I'm just going on a roll here. I sort of had it like way more eloquently described in my own head when what I was going to say and which kind of flow it was going to have, but I've definitely gone off that by now. Okay. Thanks again for joining me. So we're talking about racism here in Canada and the United States based on the fact that there's such civil unrest happening these days. And if you didn't catch my first live, you can go and check it out. I posted it, so please watch that because this is part 2. Or you can watch from here, whatever. The content is all over the place. I guess this is what happens even as a presenter and somebody who's used to doing this. If you have emotions involved, it just changes everything, doesn't it? And so that brings me back to the violence down south, what's happening right now. And, I keep hearing all these people talk about how they should behave themselves. And I'm like, seriously? Like, have you ever been smacked upside the head and then expected to, like, behave yourself? Like, as if these people have no awareness? Like, because, this is something that you are actually able to do. You can actually understand this one. So anybody who wasn't here earlier, I went through about how empathy and understanding are 2 different things, but you can understand certain things about racism and how that's like not quite right. And so as a white person, can you not understand that emotions get involved in things? And when emotions get involved, people do things that they wouldn't normally do. So instead of casting them all as criminals, maybe you could understand that they were pushed to the brink. And as I explained earlier or in the last live, police started the fights almost every time. So if the police are starting it, then whose emotions are actually escalating here? It's not the black people. But even if it was, they kind of have a right. Like, they tried to take a knee. Kaepernick lost his job. They tried peaceful protest. They got shot with water. They got shot with bullets, rubber bullets. Like, it's insanity. So what do you expect? If the only thing you listen to is violence, then that's what's going to happen. So, you're pointing the blame at the wrong people. If I was a business owner in Minneapolis, and I'm putting this out there, and I really hope that people who know any business owners in Minneapolis, I would love it if you would share this with them, because this is what my suggestion is. Every single small business in Minneapolis that was looted, rioted, and had destruction occur on their at their place of business, if that was my business, yes, of course, they didn't deserve it. And I, as a business owner, am definitely going to side with that part. But as a business owner, when you weigh out the things, that's my material stuff. And then there's these are people's lives. I kind of have to, with real strong moral integrity, say, my stuff can be replaced. Just saying. But as any of those Minneapolis business owners, this is what or any of the other cities that are being currently rioted and businesses are being affected. Instead of getting upset at the Black Lives Matter movement, where, to me, that's just so displaced, and please just bear with me for a second as I explain. It's misplaced because of this. Minneapolis riot went down like this. A police officer murdered a black man. It was videotaped, 9 minutes long, very clear. I don't think we need to even have that debate. Murdered by a police officer. That police officer then doesn't get arrested for murder, even though every single person in the country and now the world has witnessed this murder go down. He doesn't get any kind of issue until protests started happening. And once the protests started, then they lost their jobs. A man murdered a man, and then all he did was lose his job. I'm sorry, but none of us, not one citizen living in North America, would be able to murder somebody on the job, and the only repercussion we have is to lose our job. So, like, as a nation, you would think that this would cause a lot of problems. Like, wouldn't you be like, hey, wait, those rules are a little bit of a double standard. But for some reason, it only matters to the people whose race is being, like, that just to me is like mind-boggling. But then you have those people, God, I keep going on these tangents and then forgetting what I'm trying to say. Oh, I'm usually so much more eloquent than this. Where was I? Somebody help me. Oh my God, I totally lost. Oh, these people continue. We watch a police officer live by different rules than we do. And then they finally charge that police officer, but only after riots happen. But those riots kind of went like this. A bunch of people from the Black Lives Matter movement sitting on the ground very peacefully protesting this very, very valid thing to protest. And without provocation, the Missouri police force starts gassing them. For what? Is it not their First Amendment right to protest? Yes, it is. So what exactly were they doing wrong? They weren't being rowdy. They weren't breaking shit. And then a video shows up and it looks like police started the actual, like, breaking of the windows. At least that was what I saw. So, like, what? So now they're trying to control the actual dialogue of the protest. They're trying to make the black people look like thugs. And you know, that's the word you use for them, because we all have them. You call me a chug, you call them a thug, you know, these are the words. These are racist words, and the N word. And you know, this is the other thing about whites, is you love to say, well, why can they call themselves the N word? So I'm just going to explain that to you. The N-word is a really hard word to hear from African Americans, I would assume. And I would assume that because hearing racial slurs from my kind hurt me. And this is where, like, racial hierarchy is a very interesting situation in society too. So, you know, what are the stereotypes of a African American person in the United States? That they're thugs, that they're gangsters, that they're criminals, all these things, right? And this kind of goes back to clothing and why they all dress the way they do. But when something is used as a weapon, something like a word, like the N-word, you can do one of two things. When somebody is in front of you with a knife, let's just say, you can allow them to hold you at knife point, or you could try to take the knife away. So as far as rappers and other black people go using the N-word amongst themselves, that is the same thing. All they've done, what they've done in changing it, and the reason that they likely changed the way they say it even, is because it's such a hurtful word. But essentially, all they've done is they've taken that word, they've taken the knife. And the same thing goes when I call myself a half-breed. I call myself a half-breed on the regular, but trust me, you don't get to call me that. I get to call me that, my mom can call me that, my brother can call me that, but you don't get to call me that. And let me tell you why, because it's not actually a nice thing to say. And when I say it so that it becomes less hurtful. It dulls the blade of the edge when I take it back and make it my own. And I hope that makes sense to you. And the same thing goes with clothing. So, you know, gangsters, how did they start? You know, why did all the black people living in the slums of LA start dressing a certain way? Because you segregated them. You told them that they didn't belong, so they made their own culture. You told them that they didn't belong and that they didn't count, so they stood up and said, we want to count. and we're going to count in the way that we can, and we're going to dress a certain way, we're going to act a certain way, we're going to have our own dialogue, we're going to have our own way of speaking, all those things. And it was their way of taking back their own control for themselves because it was taken from them. So that's why you don't get to say the N-word. You probably shouldn't even rap it when they're rapping it. You should probably just skip right on over that word. And that's why you don't get to call me a half-breed, and you don't get to say things in jest and I was just joking either. Because in saying that I was just joking, that is covert racism. So then we come to white fragility, because then there's that. And this is something that's really interesting, because you don't get to be that hurt. I'm sorry. Like, I know it's painful, but it's not painful because of what you think. It's painful because I'm pointing out a very painful situation. I'm pointing out a very awkward situation. I'm pointing out something that is really uncomfortable for you to face. But you're shooting the messenger, okay? People pointing out your racist tendencies is not saying that you are a overt racist. Somebody pointing out your racist tendencies is pointing out the systemic conditioning that you grew up with. So, for instance, if your parents are Caucasian and they're not racist, typically, like aside from systemic racism, but your parents never once said anything negative to you about any person of color. But what they did do is they housed you in a house that was in a white neighborhood. You went to school with white people. You watched white TV. You watched, because that's all there is. You watched movies that only had white heroes. You watched all of the celebrities and famous people were white. All the people in power were white. You have now been conditioned to white supremacy. You've been conditioned to believe that that is the structure that we live in. It's not your fault, but it's your fault if you continue to do it, even when it's pointed out to you. So if a person of color is pointing out racism to you, your job isn't to defend yourself and why you were racist. Your job is to hear them, listen to them, and make note. Oh, that's racism. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. Can I ask you something? Would you mind just telling me really quickly how I can go about changing my mindset on that? Because that is how you actually affect change. Because again, this is not a black, white, brown, or black, brown, and oppressed problem. This is a white problem. It can only be fixed by white people. You have to join the racism, anti-racism cause in order for racism to be annihilated. So that brings me to I don't even see color. Oh my God, there is nothing more infuriating to me than that. I need you to fucking see color. I need you to see it, because when you say that, you're just telling me, I just want to pretend it doesn't exist. It does exist. And every time that you tell me that me, my family, and every other person who is black or indigenous or Muslim or LGBTQ doesn't fucking matter to you. That's what it actually says. And I know you think it says the opposite, but it doesn't. It says, I don't care, la, la, la. I don't want to hear your experience because I want to pretend like color doesn't exist. But you live in a world where color does exist. You live in a world where the colored people are segregated from you. It might not be as obvious as it was when it was like blacks at the back of the bus, but they're still segregated from you. And you need to understand that. We have progressed, but we have not progressed to annihilation of racism in America. That is just not where we're at. And if you want to pretend like that, then you are just fueling racism in America, and you yourself are racist. And you can get upset with me all you want and be like, I'm not a racist, I'm so nice, and I have a black friend. No, you just used your friend as a token. You just used your friend as a token. And the fact that you did that is also racism. You don't get to use us as tokens, as I said before. And that's also the hierarchy of racism. Let's talk about that a little bit. So in Canada, and one of the reasons this conversation is actually happening is I'm really tired of my white friends who are posting all about George Floyd, and not because he doesn't deserve it, and I'm sharing that as well. He does deserve it, and I want them to continue to share it. But what is annoying the F out of me is that these are friends that are claiming that I'm not racist and my heart hurts and blah, blah. And again, I'm compassionate to you. You were bred this way too, and and I appreciate every single person who is wanting to watch this, who is joining in the conversation, and who is asking me questions. But sorry. And now I totally forgot what I was saying again. This is so bad. Oh, the hierarchy of race. So they're just like going on and on about like, oh, those Americans are so racist. Meanwhile, a month ago, 3 First Nations shot in Winnipeg by police, and not one of them shared it. So I tried an experiment, and I started just posting like, hey, by the way, like, great post. Hope you understand too that this just happened in Canada. And not one of them responded to it. Not one of them started doing their own research on it. Not one of them started to do anything about it. Not one posted about this situation, nothing. They just ignored my comment completely. So when I contemplated that a little bit, I sort of just kind of came to the conclusion that, oh, I see, you're not black racist. I got it. I see you. And that's the hierarchy of racism, right? Like, if certain Canadians can get compassionate to Black Lives Matter movement, but they can't get compassionate to murdered and missing women or 2 dead youth and 1 adult in Winnipeg at the hands of police, and that doesn't cause them to have an uproar, then that tells me that in their mind there is a hierarchy to brown people. So it goes Black, and obviously First Nations are somewhere down here for them. And you see this too, like with Asians, and they have racism too, and in particular nowadays with COVID, it's getting terrible for them. But like, what do they say about them? Like, we're just talking about stereotypes, right? So like African American stereotypes, like, oh, okay. And if you're just joining me, I do not hold these viewpoints. I'm just saying other people that they're thugs, that they're criminals, blah, blah, blah. Same thing goes with First Nations, that we're alcoholics, drug users, that we're lazy, all the things. But you get to Asians and they're just really smart and bad drivers. And that there is another hierarchy of racism. Like, we appreciate Asians up here, like, unless they eat bad things, and then we're going to put them down here. Like, you can't even decide what the hierarchy is of their racism either. Like, one day it's up here, but it's the same perpetrator, like I said earlier. Same perpetrator. So all we have to do is change the mindset of the people who are perpetrating it, and that's how we get rid of racism. We don't get rid of it because, and I'm not saying like those overt racists, they got a whole other life to live before they get that advanced at a soul level to be able to even understand it. So like, we're not trying to convert those. I know that the people are kind in my life. I know that the people who I've called out for covert racism don't mean it. I know that. I'm not calling you a racist when I point out racist tendencies you might have. I don't believe you to be a racist. And if we go back to what I said about the safety that I have in doing this, or the safety that I don't have in doing this and speaking up, I put a boundary out. So in a situation that I'm not safe, I go, I'm not engaging anymore. This conversation is over. So if I reach out and I point out to you that you are having a racist tendency, It's because I feel safe with you. It's because I understand that fundamentally you are a good person, that fundamentally you want to do good. I'm trying to help you to see. But if you turn that around and blame me as the messenger and get upset and unfriend me and decide to never be my friend again and all those things, then I guess I was right. Because my intention, and because this is the thing, is you're always talking about your intention. What's my intention? Well, my intention wasn't that you were actually a racist. I just have a very strong understanding that the system we all grew up in perpetuates our beliefs that this is normal. That me being less than you is normal. That you getting to misbehave and me not getting to misbehave is normal, because that's another thing. Right? White people get to say all kinds of shit. They get to misbehave all over the place. Holy. None of us brown people get to do that. Just saying. We don't get to have hissy fits and fucking act out like you do. And the reason we don't is because we'll get arrested like this. We'll get shamed. All kinds of things. So that is a privilege. It's only onto you. So the fact that you resort to name calling me on Facebook or whatever, that actually is privilege in action. Because I don't get to call you names. You know why? Because my life is in danger when I do. And that's just reality. But you can actually. And when you don't say, oh, Amber, your life's not in danger. I just fucking put this out on live. Okay? There's real overt racists in the world. Yes, I did. Anytime anybody of color does this, okay? I'm hopefully I'm not, but anyways, so those are just some of my thoughts. And if you want to know what you can do, then again, there's a few things. One thing is that I back to white fragility a little bit, is that when a person of color says to you that you're being racist, or that again, please give them the benefit of their emotions on that. They might be expressing it a little bit bigger than maybe you were. Their response might be a triggered response, so it might come off a lot more harsh than they actually intend, or maybe you're racist this much and they kind of accuse you of that much, or whatever. Just kind of accept that it's through emotion, number one. But unfortunately, most of the time, people respond with offense. And when you respond with offense, that is white fragility. And I understand that it's really hard to hear that your people are racist and that there is a system designed for that, and white supremacy isn't just the KKK. Right? White supremacy is the system we all live in. White supremacy is not just the KKK lynch mobbing. It's the supremacy of what our laws are designed on. That is what it is. So, oh my God, I keep forgetting where I'm going. Oh yeah, what can you do? So, don't get offended when someone says that you're being racist. They're most likely trying to help you see it for yourself, But then the next thing that happens is then it's they just instead start name calling, oh, wow, we don't get name called all the time, thanks. They start name calling, and they start being yeah, you don't know, you guys are just sensitive or whatever. But really, maybe there's something to look at. Maybe you just need to kind of contemplate what they were pointing at. And then the next thing that happens is a lot of people try to tell me what we should be doing. You know what First Nations should be doing? Oh, why don't you tell me? Please do. Don't tell us what we need, because what we need is for you to stop suppressing us. That's what we need. We need you to stop. So to do that, you need to see it. Then you need to do the work. And that work is hard because it means unpeeling layers. And you're going to continuously to unpeel layers. And there's somebody who's joined us who I love to death, because this woman, as a Caucasian woman, does everything. We've had tough conversations. And I know that I have ripped really hard layers off for her to see of herself, and she owns it every time. This woman is amazing, and you know who you are. You know who you are. And so one of the aha moments that I helped her see was this exact thing, which was stop being a white hero. We don't need you to be our hero. We need you to be our ally. It's not the same thing. Okay? Stop telling us how to heal ourselves. You're not the one who can heal us. You don't know better than us. That is the point. You only come from it like that because because of the white supremacy and the system we live under. You believe that to be true, but we don't need your help. Well, we do, but it's not in the way that you think. We need your help by you standing up to white people. We need your help by you not expecting me to be always the educator. I need you to look it up. I need you to do some research. You know? We need your help by you standing alongside us. We need your help for you to be my bulletproof vest when I put myself in front of the firing squad. We need you to educate yourself. We need you to see color. We need you to see that it exists in the world, and we need you to really educate yourself. Understand what actually happened in First Nations Canada, and don't look to mainstream media and don't look to education in Canada. You need to look to First Nations channels for that, because it's not written accurately there. It's not presented accurately there. So you need to ask. And I don't mind being the educator. I've obviously signed up for that. But I'm just saying in general, like, don't expect everybody to be able to be educating you. And you might trigger some people with that, you know, and you might get some negativity. And I don't agree with that. And actually that brings me to something else that I was thinking about, because I saw today. Now, I'm going to bring up Justin Trudeau. And any Indigenous that is listening to this, okay, he owes us a lot. Okay, that man owes us so much, and I'm certainly not going to say he's not racist. That man still has some layers to peel. Okay, I'm just going to use him as an example, though. Back in college, the guy paints his face black, and I am also not condoning that. Hello, but. Back in college, the man paints his face black. Today, he speaks out against racism. Now, I have my own issues with that, but that's against the point that I'm about to make. So he speaks out against racism today. And then I see all the comments on the things that's now like, blackface, blah, blah, blah. I'm really going to encourage any minorities that are watching right now to never do that. And here's why. Yes, he did something terrible. But we need our allies, and we need the Caucasians of the world to be able to progress. We need them to be able to have made mistakes in the past and not vilify them in the present, especially if they're making movement. So to say to somebody, you don't get to pretend like you're not racist, you painted your face black 25 years ago, is basically telling white people not to bother. Like, don't even bother, because we're all just going to call you hypocrites anyways. Progression is not the same as hypocrisy, and we have to allow humanity, because we have to realize too that they were also conditioned under the exact same system that kept us down. So that conditioning needs to be unlayered and removed. And a layer doesn't come off like, one piece of clothing. It's like an onion. As you go, you're going to continue to see more and more where your racial tendencies are. And we as minorities need to allow for that. They're not going to be perfect ever, but the fact that somebody is trying makes them our ally. That's what makes them our ally. The fact that they're truly trying to be compassionate and empathetic and see things from our side. So please refrain from holding them accountable to something that they did 20 years ago. Unless they're still behaving the same way, then of course, like, nothing has changed in 20 years. That's a totally different, conversation. But then we go to Justin Trudeau, which is just, again, today, like, the man stands in front of the whole country talking about the United States, the race issue in the United States of America, yet he never once spoke out about the 3 kids killed by Winnipeg police in April. So, like, when I said, yes, I see Justin Trudeau making some race movement, he still has a long way to go. But I also see a man that maybe is willing to hear it. I don't know, but certainly not from a political standpoint, but that's a whole different conversation. But it also just goes to show that, again, racism is a systemic thing. And it's so layered. And so a lot of people have racist tendencies without even knowing it. And a lot of really, 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 really good people with really good intentions exude those racist tendencies. And all that you need to do to help the cause of racism is to hear it, to sit within yourself and contemplate what you heard, even if you don't agree with it at first, because your first initial instinct is always going to be to defend yourself, right? I want to urge you to stop that, to just go, no, I'm not going to defend myself. That is a brown person. I can't understand where they come from. I can only empathize with them. So in order to do that, I need to stop assuming I know. And it's hard, and it takes courage. And anybody who's white who does it, it takes a lot of courage, because it means you now have to face your own white family. You need to face a lot of things, and you are now going to be putting yourself in the line of fire also. But the truth of that is that your line of fire is like a squirt gun, and my line of fire is more like a machete. So, like, that's the other thing. Like, use your privilege for that. Don't just be like, yeah, I cheer you on and I stand with you. Like, actually fucking put shit on your Facebook, put shit on your social media, speak up against it. Actually, like, put yourself physically between a minority and anybody who is actually physically threatening them. Because here's the thing, is with your light skin, you are way less likely to experience the violence that's about to occur. And I know that because I am light-skinned. And I can tell you that I've had way too many experiences where I personally have been the lightest skinned person, and I've put myself there. And being female and being lighter skinned definitely gives myself a little bit more privilege. And I can often step in between police and one of my dark-skinned friends who's getting into trouble, because I'm not going to experience this same level of violence that they are. And I would rather get shoved or, possibly punched once than watch my friend get beat to death. So, do these things, put yourself out there. Don't just stand by and be like, yeah, I'm with you, clap, 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 because that's not going to do anything. You need to actually join the cause. You need to become anti-racist. To just say you're not racist isn't enough. You need to actually be anti it. You need to stand up against it to your fellow white people, because that is where the broken piece exists, is there. It doesn't get fixed with me. It doesn't get fixed with Black Lives Matter. The reason we're protesting, the reason I'm even doing this, is because I need you to know it exists. I need you to understand that it is here, it is live in Canada, and it happens today. This is not something that happened 200 years ago. This is happening today. And we all need to push for that. And that also means we need to start with systems in Canada, because again, these systems, and all in North America, were designed by rich white people in order to keep slaves enslaved, literally. Like, the system in the United States was never designed for freedom for African American people. It was never designed for that. So to expect it to be there is fucked up. And part of my language, I've been trying really hard not to swear during this, but So I really appreciate every single person that really wants to try their best to do everything that they can to help this. And we need our allies. We can't do it without you. And so I really appreciate anybody who's willing to become super vulnerable and put themselves out there and join the cause. And I am definitely open to any questions that you may have, or, like, let's just say that you have a friend who, or you were confronted with some kind of racist motivation, and you didn't quite understand it. I'm happy to be that third party to sort of help you sift through it. Sometimes I need a moment of contemplation, because as we were also raised in the same system that told us that we belonged where we belong. And so sometimes I have to wrap my brain around certain topics. But, I love that the conversation is happening and that there is so many people involved. And I really think that this is different. I think this time down in the United States is different. It feels different. It feels like white people are actually tired of the white people being racist. And I think that they are really trying to stand up now and see it differently. That's the conversations I've been seeing anyways. I've been really happy. And I've really been seeing a lot of people just being like, okay, like, I get it exists. I just don't get how to change it. And that's why I kind of wanted to share our insight and kind of the defining reasons that racism is so hard and so prevalent in America. And when I say America, I mean like, come on, like, we're talking, we were colonized all the way, like, down to South America, like, all the indigenous. So, like, my cousins are down in the South Americas too. So, like, they were colonized down there as well. But, all of North America, we have a problem, and it's not going to go away without everybody's help. And I think that's about all I have to say. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. I feel really heard, and I appreciate it.